Let's reset that clock. Let's go week 10. Let's do this. All right, let's go. Let's get this thing going. It is week 10. I can't believe it's already week 10. It's been a crazy, crazy week. I know a lot of you, there's definitely a whole lot of stuff going on that could be distracting from fantasy football. Hopefully, we're here to get your priorities straight. Who cares about all that crazy stuff? Let's get back to what we love. Bread and butter, fantasy football. On my left, we got my man, Jeff. Jeff, how are we doing today, my man?
Doing well, brother. We're short Mr. Joseph today. There's some sick folks in his house. And I don't just mean that, his personality, how he usually is, just sick physically from what we gather. But always good to be here on a Sunday morning. And I feel bad for anybody who had to go up against or is going up against a lineup that has Jamar Chase in it, because 264 yards and 3 touchdowns on a Thursday really puts a damper if you're going up against that guy.
That's nothing if you have A.J. Brown. No, I'm just kidding. There's not going to be anybody who has any kind of numbers like that, I imagine. I think it was the 5th best fantasy performance ever in the history of fantasy football. So that's kind of cool, man. He looked really good out there. I have one team where I'm actually up against a Jamar and why can't I remember the quarterback for the Bengals? Joe Burrow. I don't know why that was blanking my brain right there, but I have a stack that I'm up against there that I'm pretty much sure that I lost this weekend, just because those guys lit it up. What a crazy game that was. And here we go. We'll go ahead and kick it off with the injury report today. Not a whole lot of motion in there. We had Jonathan Brooks still inactive. I was hoping he would get the start this week. That's a guy, maybe if he's available on your waivers this Wednesday, go grab him. I think he'll, especially with Miles Sanders going out on a cart, I think we'll see Jonathan Brooks be a pretty detailed piece of this offense that somehow looking pretty good today. Drake London, he's expected to play. Nico Collins, he's a game time decision, and it does look like he is going to play. It does look like he'll be on a limited snap count. I know that the Dalton Schultz might be a guy that you might want to get going in off leagues today, just for the reason that he's kind of almost the only guy, because Tank Dell, he is expected to play today. Again, I mean, he might be limited. He is definitely going to be playing through an injury, so keep your eye on that situation over there. Brian Thomas Jr. expected to play today. Again, same thing. Keep an eye on that. I'm still probably starting up Austin Eckler. We got Gabe Davis expected to play. We got Trevor Lawrence not expected to play today, so definitely going to be a downtick on the on Jacksonville, and which is hard because they should already have as many downticks as a guy could absolutely want out of that team right now. So, but Trevor Lawrence not expected to play. Debo expected to play. Chris Olave, he's out with a concussion. The big news coming back. Christian McCaffrey should be back today with San Francisco. Looks like he's going to be on a limited snap count, about 20 snaps that he'll be out there. I can just say for most of my teams, before we start getting into the Christian McCaffrey questions, if he's on the field, you can't put him on your bench. 20 snaps from Christian McCaffrey is like 1,000 snaps from, say, Gus Edwards or something like that. So definitely starting him since he's back. Dak Prescott, looks like they were looking at him going to the IR. Now it's looking like it might even be a season-ending hamstring injury for Dak Prescott. Downtick your CeeDee Lambs, man. It sucks. Another team that really couldn't use the pain right now, and they're losing Dak Prescott, although there is a world where that team kind of improves getting rid of him. Outside of that, we got Micah Parsons is questionable. We got CeeDee Lamb will be playing today. I'm thinking that's about it for injury news right there. So we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. We've got our man Trans-Siberian. He says, "Hi boys, nice haircut, Mike. Thank you so much. I had a crazy job interview this week that hopefully I'll be able to disclose here very soon." We got Etienne, Algar, Ingram, Hawkinson. He needs 2. Downs, Shakir, Sunday night. Nico Collins, Jameson Williams, half PPR. Collins, easy choice if he plays. He doesn't, I'm stuck with Jameson. Jeff, go ahead and lead this one off.
I'll tell you. So that's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I'll address the haircut. Yes, Mikey. Nice looking haircut there, kid. Even though you typically go hat. Oh, there we go. That's a rare top of the head sighting. But getting into the first couple scenarios there, ATN and Algier. I mean, I don't like because now you got two guys, and you got Algier, and then you got Bijan Robinson, you got Etienne. I think they got Tank Bigsby. That's the other guy on Jacksonville. So I don't like either of those choices. If I'm going to have to pick one, I would say Etienne over Algier, just because he just seems to have a little bit more of an edge, or kind of more of a 50-50 with Bigsby than Algier does with Bijan Robinson. And Ingram against Hawkinson. I love Hawkinson. I mean, that's the same game. Well, you just said Trevor Lawrence is out Jacksonville-wise, so Minnesota's going up against Jacksonville. I think Hawkinson does some pretty good damage, so I would say Hawkinson over Ingram and then Etienne over Algier. As far as the other two, I mean, yes, I agree. So Collins, easy one. I think you just gave his status there. That's an easy one if he's healthy. And then if we're looking down the line, I mean, gosh, I'd lean Shakir. Buffalo's at Indianapolis. They're a favorite on the road. I guess I would have to say, Collins, certainly if he's healthy, and then Shakir, but not by a whole lot, I would say. How about you?
Yeah, I think Shakir's the guy over there in Buffalo. I think he's a guy that's been getting the ball a lot. Jameson Williams isn't coming off injury. He's coming off of a suspension. And so I think he'll be right back to normal. With he's not getting a whole awful lot of volume over there, but I don't know we're going to see a whole lot of volume on Nico Collins. Although, man, if he plays, he's lock solid one. As far as the other two, Etienne is the running back one somehow in Jacksonville still, so I am going to start him over Algier. I do like Algier quite a bit today, but I still like Etienne a little bit more. I'm with you on Hawkinson over Ingram. I just don't like not having Trevor Lawrence out there, because that was the guy who made Ingram shine last year. And then so for me, it's going to be Shakir and Williams. If Nico plays, it's going to be Nico and Williams for me. And it's pretty close for me right there. I think it's one of those things that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but as you're talking, I'm just looking above here at some news, and I'm seeing Amari Cooper is out for Buffalo.
Okay. So that's even a bigger uptick for Shakir. I might even play Shakir and Williams. Just seeing what I'm going to see out of Nico. If they start saying words like snap count or anything like that, that one's tough, because you can't really sit Nico Collins if he's out there. So, man, that's a really, really tough one. And they're playing Detroit. So, I mean, yeah, I'm still going to say if Nico plays, and we should know that well before. So I'm thinking, gosh, that's a tough one, man. This guy always makes me test my brain. But yeah, I think Jameson Williams and Shakir. If Nico plays, I'm playing Nico over Jameson, actually, and I'm probably going to roll with Shakir right there. Does that change your mind with that news?
I mean, not necessarily, I guess. But what I'm surprised in, and just looking at that particular game, you got Detroit at Houston. It's the night game tonight. I'm looking at that, and it's not necessarily the highest over-under of the week, and I'm kind of surprised, because between those two teams, they can put up some points. So I'm surprised it's not. It looks like, to me, at least right now, San Francisco and Tampa Bay has a higher over-under, and then the Cincinnati-Baltimore game did on Thursday, which obviously that came through on the over with just a flat-out offensive clinic by both teams, seemingly showing their strengths. But anyways. So, no, it doesn't necessarily change my mind, but I'm just happen to be looking at that particular game, was surprised by the over-under on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, nope. It's definitely crazy. Like I said, it makes me lean a little Shakir. Nico Collins is a locked in, loaded one. If he plays, we're putting him in there.
Right.
And I just have to also say, man, the one thing that I don't ever try to get political, or nobody even knows what the hell I think about anything. But the one thing that I'm totally just hoping for is that everything calms down over there for you, man, and everything gets settled. Nothing gets worse. Everything gets better. Your safety is just always on my mind, my man. over there in Ukraine. So I hope to God you're safe, and I hope you're staying safe, you and your family. And buddy, if you need a place to stay, it's a little cold, but come on over here in Nebraska. We'll put you up, and I'll even let you drink Dr. Pepper, my man.
And if you need some Mountain Dew, just put one of these in the chat, man. Put one of these in the comments. You need some Mountain Dew. That on the DL, I'll send it over there, bro. Don't sweat that.
There you go. We got pigeons. We got all kinds of ways to get that going.
And we've been invited for dinner too, by the way. Don't forget, he invited us. I think it was either last week or the week before. So we're gonna have to make an appearance if we need to either bring some supplies or just help out in general. So we're invited for dinner, apparently.
There you go. Yep. We'll have to just go in there on a rescue mission or something like that. Like, dude, I've got a pretty good little karate chop there that can probably get us at least through France. I feel like I could get through France pretty easy. But what do I know? We're going to be taking a look at a few of these games here. So like the Minnesota-Jacksonville game without Trevor Lawrence, is Minnesota going to be just kind of pounding on these guys all game long?
I would think so. I mean, Jacksonville surprisingly has been fairly pitiful the last last year and a half or so. I mean, they looked like a solid playoff team even just a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden just seemingly falling off a cliff. I don't know if that's the Doug Peterson effect, and if Philadelphia knew something that other team or other teams in the league or other owners didn't realize, because I thought it was a mistake when they dumped Peterson from Philadelphia shortly after a Super Bowl win, but seeing the nosedive that Jacksonville has taken has been really interesting. And then you got Minnesota started off, I want to say 5-0, either 4-0 or 5-0. I'm forgetting, but now they're 6-2 now. They lost the number one spot, or number one as far as seed is concerned, to Detroit. So they're itching to get back on top in that division. And then I think a Jacksonville matchup in Jacksonville is definitely a get right game. The most intriguing one to me is Pittsburgh at Washington. This is kind of like a battle of the heavyweights without realizing these teams were going to be heavyweights coming into the season. Everybody's all over Jaden Daniels. You and I were on top of him even in the preseason, so we knew what was coming. But Washington is probably one of the more exciting teams to watch these days, and we haven't said that in a very long time.
Yeah, that's a guy that he outdid the expectations I had for him. I knew he was going to fit in with that Washington team, but his transition to the NFL has been next to none. I don't think I've ever seen anybody come out and make it look as easy as he did. CJ Stroud looked pretty damn good last year as well, but I don't think that he looked as good as Jaden Daniels. So I do think that is a great game right there. I think that's going to be very low scoring. I think both of those defenses have a lot more to offer than people give them credit for. And I do think that Minnesota is just going to probably pace Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's just kind of a limp dog. I think they're going to be gone till the end of the season. They're going to have bad luck. We got Kevin Turner. He says, how y'all doing this morning, fellas? We got a 12-team half PPR league. I need to flex. My play options right now are Jaylen Warren, Ricky Persil, Ray Davis, or Noah Brown. And my first part of that question is who? I've never even heard of any of these guys. No, I'm just kidding, man. That's a tough situation to be in right there. What do you say right here, Jeff? What do you think?
So I think, first of all, I'm going to throw out Ricky Persil just because especially with McCaffrey back, he's way down on the depth chart. Not that any of these guys are really top of the depth chart, but I'll have to say if you he needs one or two. I mean, of those, they're not great options. I would have to say Jaylen Warren reluctantly because he is a running back. He is the number 2 option behind Najee Harris, but he's proven in the past, that he can get some targets, can get some receptions out of the backfield. I actually like Noah Brown on Washington. So that guy's interesting to watch, man. He had a few good games last year, and I want to say he was on Houston last year where he put up some pretty good numbers. He's coming off a couple weeks ago on the Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels. He's been getting some targets, so he's an interesting to watch. I'd have to say if I'm picking one, then I would have to say Jaylen Warren. How about you?
So that's who I was leaning for first, was definitely Jaylen Warren, just because just kind of everything you said right there. He's probably going to be your guy that at least, we're going to be almost just looking at volume plays. Like the rest of these guys have had some really, really big games, but those are on very, very low volume options, right? Like Ricky Persil, I think he could be okay. He'll be like that Brandon Ayuk type role, but this season, it's really seemed like Brandon Ayuk is not been utilized, and it's not like him as a player. I'm saying they haven't been utilizing that position as much as they have had to, because it seems like when they're getting that first, second, third look and somebody's open between Jordan Mason, which will now be Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel. So you've got all three of those options before you're even looking his way. Ray Davis is again, I mean, he had like a 76-yard touchdown, so his stats look fantastic, but that's one big run, So, and Noah Brown, kind of the same thing, although his targets have clicked up to 6 targets per week. I do not mind that volume as much. He's got 73 yards, but I'm still leaning Jaylen Warren here. I do feel like he's probably going to be the guy that gets you the most volume, but it's nasty. It's tough, but man, it's also week 10 fantasy football. So
yeah, and I'm looking at this right now too. Yeah, you did have Ray Davis on I want to say it was a reception, a 70-yard touchdown reception, I want to say. And Jaylen Warren, as I'm looking at, does not have a touchdown yet this year, but I mean he's averaging somewhere in the vicinity between 12 to 15 touches a game. He's a decent amount of targets, but he's going to have a little bit more opportunity. You got Ray Davis, who's coming off a big fantasy game on paper, but not necessarily consistently. Although it's a curveball not having Amari Cooper there, but I think that leans more towards Shakir and some of the other guys than Ray Davis. So I'm still going Warren, but just kind of throwing that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just saying, with a new quarterback out there and just kind of thinking about the scenario, Etienne is getting more and more tasty there. Trans-Siberian. Jerry Bagshaw says, just made a dynasty trade. I love dynasty trade situations. We love that kind of thing. Says, what are your thoughts? We just traded away Jonathan Taylor in a second for DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that we're talking about a win now team. I like this trade. Jeff, what do you think about this? We got early capital, or we got some capital with the second going out the door, but that's not a first. We lost Jonathan Taylor. We got a wide receiver one, a hot wide receiver one in DK Metcalf, and an underutilized, and I feel like is in for a positive regression, Michael Pittman. What do you think right here?
Well, Pittman's funny, man, because he's a clear cut. He has the talent to be a clear cut number one in Indy. He just doesn't have the numbers of a number one. So, yeah, I agree. Jonathan Taylor, man, what a disappointment that guy's been ever since he had that season a few years ago where the following season he was the obvious number one overall pick, and the guy has just fallen off the face of the earth since. And I don't think – and he hasn't gotten right seemingly yet. I thought, and incorrectly before the season, I thought he was going to be or should be top few as far as picks are concerned. He just hasn't played out that way. So I think that's actually a good move for DK and Pittman. Pittman doesn't show or doesn't have the stats that he should, in my opinion. DK does have the stats, and especially Geno Smith, I believe, still leads the league in passing yards, I want to say. So I actually do like that. And Jonathan Taylor, what a disappointment. It's tough giving up a second-round pick, but for those two receivers, I think that's a good move.
Yeah, the things that I like about this is the fact that you're getting youth in Michael Pittman. And again, I don't feel like his situation's always going to be bad. DK Metcalf is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Year in, year out, he gets plenty of volume almost every single game. Like you said, Geno Smith loves throwing that football a lot. It does look like he does have 2 more years on that contract. So Michael Pittman will be, unfortunately, a Colt until 2027. But then after that, man, that door's wide open, and who knows where this guy can go, where we can get some. So I'm not really looking at a big positive there, but Jonathan Taylor to me is one of those headache running backs that seems to be like every single time he starts gaining momentum, the guy gets hurt. And so, I mean, he ends up sitting on your IR, but man, when he is good, he is locked and loaded, a good, solid running back one. So it's not like you got fleeced. I think this is one of those trades, and this is one of my favorite kind of trades, is I feel like you both kind of walking away like you both kind of got screwed a little bit. I think that's the best kind of dynasty trades that there are, right? When you both feel like that little bit of sting because you lost a really decent piece. And then, I mean, if you just kind of isolate this, Jonathan Taylor for DK Metcalf, Granted, you're probably going to be getting a little bit ahead with Jonathan Taylor with age versus DK Metcalf age. And then a second for Michael Pittman. That's a really, really good deal, especially if you believe he's got the talent, like I believe most of us do. And Jerry Bagshaw, I'm with you, buddy. Hit that like button. Y'all get out there. Hit that like, subscribe, hit that bell. Do what you got to do. Follow this Triple Play Fantasy because we're going to be taking this thing to the moon over the next couple of years. Another guy that I've been kind of thinking about. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just pull up my we don't really have to get into the DFS thing, but I am going to go ahead and bring up my my DFS lineup for today because there's a couple of guys on here that I'd like to talk about while we're kind of in here waiting for questions here. And that's Calvin Austin the third, the third episode of Calvin Austin. That's a guy that I've been kind of keeping my eyeballs on. They're at Washington. I feel like this game's going to have to be won in the air a little bit more. The guy over the past few games, now granted, he's not getting a huge amount of targets, but last week he went 354, 3 for 4 for 54 and a touchdown. Seems like he was kind of getting some 4 for 5s in there. And then, 2 for 5, 1 for 4. So that's, I think, maybe a little bit more Russell Wilson, but this guy, we know that Russell Wilson has the arm to support more than one wide receiver one. Do you have any interest in this guy today? Do you think that he'll have any fantasy value, Calvin Austin the third?
I think he's an interesting one to bring up, and I'll say when I'm right and certainly admit when I'm wrong. And I think both you and I said that Fields was the guy in Pittsburgh, and from what we can tell now, I guess Russ is kind of, well, at least in the short term, back to his old self looking, and has injected some life into the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So he's definitely an interesting one. I think you're right as far as having to pass is concerned. Washington has proven they can put up some points. Jaden Daniels is a dangerous quarterback, and even though Pittsburgh has a really tough D, I expect them to score against that. So Austin, I mean, if you have a few other options, I would say take that. But as far as the DFS standpoint is concerned, I think that's a good move to go just because he's so cheap. That way you can get in a guy like a Saquon Barkley or others that are going to get the touches and get in the end zone. So I think that's a halfway decent move on the DFS standpoint. So.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if this guy's available in your league, there might be a couple of guys that I'm over him on. So if you have any questions about that, like, hey, I'm kind of apprehensive. I know that the waiver wires with that election on Tuesday, I know a lot of people had their focus. I was on probably 5 different places where I got the first waiver, and then I also got the second waiver. And I was like, holy crap, did nobody put waivers in? And this is out of 11 other teams. And all of them said the same thing, man. I was so glued to the TV watching that election. Man, I was drinking beer. I was watching a little bit of basketball and stuff like that. I was like, well, I guess whatever happens, happens. I'm not a big political guy. I like to pay attention to certain things, but most of it is just, to me, stuff that's kind of out of our control.
Mike, so, I went to bed at 9:30, dude. So I'm right there. I wasn't paying attention to anything. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
that news maybe hit me in the morning, but I was out. I didn't even care about whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, once it happens, there's really not a whole lot more you can do and let the rest of it kind of shake up where it will. One guy I kind of was hesitant on here was Ray Davis in my lineup. Now, he had, like I said, I think we are just chasing points with Ray Davis right now. And but so with him, I'm kind of thinking, like, if you look at the volume approach, he's had at least, 5, 6, 4 rushing attempts. Do you think he's a good revision to James Cook? Like, do you think James Cook is going to start ceding a little bit more and more time to this guy? Or do you think that this is I'm just chasing points, maybe we ought to change this guy out?
This is another one where I think it's a halfway decent move from a DFS standpoint, but we always talk about don't get trapped into the pitfalls of what a guy did the previous week alone. He hasn't necessarily had the track record leading up to this week. He had a big week last week, but it was capped basically by that one play where he took it to the house. So it's a tough one to have a guy catch lightning in a bottle 2 weeks in a row. again, he's cheap from a FanDuel standpoint, which allows you to get some other guys in there. Would I have him in my normal lineup? Probably not. It's not a terrible play, especially given that Buffalo has a little bit of injury and he might have a few more targets than he would otherwise. But so I actually had one that got DM to me where they were looking at Kirk Cousins or Kyler Murray. And I thought that was an interesting one to kind of bounce off you and see what your thoughts were. I tend to lean Kirk Cousins at New Orleans. Kyler Murray, he's I want to say they're home against the Jets in the later games. Jets tough D. I was leaning Kirk Cousins. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, either Kirk Cousins or Kyler Murray.
Actually, I like Kirk Cousins has just been on fire, right? Like he hasn't had a bad week for about 4 weeks now. I know I was riding him daily, really, really hard here. We can just pull up Kirk Cousins right now real fast and just kind of get down to where that guy's sitting. But yeah, no, Kirk Cousins has been looking really, really good. Getting the ball where we need it, getting the ball down there fast. We've been getting everybody involved on that offense. So really, his pieces haven't been all that good outside of Bijan Robinson. But, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. 23 catches, 4 touchdowns, 276. He had that one game like it was 1 and 2 interceptions, 232. That was a 9. Then a 12 in there as well. But, man, we had the 38 out there. This guy has been having some solid weeks. And this week, facing the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints, it feels like they kind of had themselves a little bit of a fire sale. I'm thinking I like Kirk Cousins. I think
True. Well, I didn't even get brought up here. The Lattimore trade, man, that was huge to Washington. You want to talk about Washington become a contender overnight, and yeah, that's a good point. Actually, New Orleans, who started off seemingly as the hottest team in the league, went 2-0, and then has lost 7 straight. And I don't know what the hell happened to them, but they trade away their best defensive player, and it strengthens one of the best teams in the NFC. So that's an interesting one. So yeah, that's not a terrible point with him not being there, and Cousins having the ability to put up the yardage that he could might be a better move than Murray against the tough Jets defense.
Yep. Nope. I agree. I like it. I like Cousins there. We got Jerry Bagshaw saying coming back. He says flex play Mostert or Sterling Shepard or Dalton Kincaid. He has the Kincaid right there at the end. What are you doing right here, Jeff?
Well, first of all, I'll take Kincaid out of the equation. Huge disappointment for Kincaid so far this year. I thought he was going to be top 1 or 2 tight ends in the league. I thought he was going to get targets galore. He's gotten some here and there, but just way lower than I expected from Kincaid. Matter of fact, I had him and Trey McBride in one of my leagues, and I thought for sure Kincaid would outperform McBride, but that just simply has not been the case. So if we're talking about Mostert or Sterling Shepard, both decent options. We always say Ty goes to the running back. I'd have to lean Mostert on this one. But Shepard's an interesting one because he's Tampa Bay, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're home against San Francisco, and with the injuries there, he's going to get his targets, but you kind of get a feeling, or you assume that Mostert will have more touches than Shepard, just being the running back, even though it's running back by committee. I think he would have to be the safer play.
It seems to me like, so I've been seeing like Sterling Shepard had 5 targets over the past couple of weeks. Hasn't been really, Sterling Shepard's one of those guys that I don't feel like has been able to get anything done as far as being, he used to be okay as a Giant. He'd get that like 3 touchdown game and then he'd get injured and he'd be out for the year. And then, cause that was kind of his MO. Mostert's kind of in that same bank right there. I just don't have a whole lot of confidence. I think A-Chain has definitely supplanted the whole role there. I think that they're going to have to throw a little bit more than they're going to have to run today. I'm actually going to lean Kincaid here. And I know it's crazy, and I absolutely agree with you. He has been such a tremendous disappointment this season. But he's another one of those guys that I feel like is due for a very positive regression, right? When you look at the guy's targets over the past like month, 2 months even, like even at Baltimore back in September, he had 7 targets. Houston, 6 targets. Jets, 7 targets. Tennessee, 6 targets. Seattle, 7 targets. Last week in Miami, 10 targets. He hasn't been getting a lot of catches out of those, and a lot of that. So a target is also when Josh Allen throws it right at your foot, right? And that's the end of the play. So that's still a target, and that is what one of Kincaid's. He is in the general vicinity when we got to do the check down. He doesn't want him to catch it. Josh Allen is a smart. He likes to preserve his receivers. He doesn't throw them into danger like, here, catch this so you can get smashed. He throws it at your feet so he doesn't get the intentional grounding. So you got to attribute at least probably 3 targets to that per game. But so that's a lot of volume for a guy. And it's just, again, it's only a matter of time for him to get that ball. And I think this is going to be the day for that. And out of those 3, I'm leaning Dalton Kincaid.
Interesting.
Right, Jeff. It's, the running back is probably your safest bet, but I have a feeling Kincaid has himself a day.
We shall see.
We shall see. Kevin Turner says, appreciate you guys. He goes, got one more in my 10 team, half PPR. Who to start, Jalen Waddle or DeAndre Hopkins? That is a wild question that we're asking this right now. Jeff, go ahead. What do you got?
Oh, Kevin, I'm so glad you brought up DeAndre Hopkins, man, because there was a couple scenarios last week where I said Hopkins is going to gel quickly in Kansas City, and look what happens. He has 2 touchdowns. He has turned into the go-to guy for Mahomes. This is a tremendous fit. Not that Waddle doesn't put up decent numbers, but he doesn't have the same kind of ceiling, I suppose, would be the term for Hopkins. Dude, Hopkins is the guy now. He's a tremendous talent. Now that he's on a team with another tremendous talent, sparks are going to fly. And to me, it's Hopkins all the way on that.
Yeah, nope, I'm with you. I agree. Hopkins looked really good. He had 9 targets last week. I just can't believe that he is still doing what he's doing. Although you can, this is one of the best receivers to ever grace us in the NFL, man. That guy's got, again, like nobody ever talks about this stat, but he's got a 15-yard catch zone, which means if you throw it within 15 yards, he has a high potential chance of catching the football. That's so far. I mean, that's what, like,
that's like Dennis Rodman on rebounding. That's what that's equivalent to. You know, if he could get within the vicinity, Rodman's getting that rebound. That's what that sounds like to me.
Exactly. Or, I mean, if somebody throws a football to you in an empty garage, anywhere in that garage, he has a chance of catching that football. A high chance of catching that football. That's insane, man. It's insane. So it's good to see that guy coming back on a team that actually deserves him. So we got Kevin Turner. He says, appreciate you guys. He's got one more. Oh, we just did that one. But yeah, hopefully that helps you out. DeAndre Hopkins, hopefully he has himself another big game. Trans-Siberian says, I forgot to give you kudos for JSN last week. Heck yeah, dude. I liked him a lot last week. He says, just curious why you both didn't like Downs without Pittman.
So I'll answer that just by saying there's just something about Indianapolis that just doesn't sit well with me. It's almost like Indianapolis, the entire offense is like AJ Dillon. There's such a letdown a lot or most times at least. So I like Pittman. I like what he the expectations he could have, but he just doesn't come through. Downs, I don't know. That truly there's something about the Indianapolis offense that I can't get on board with. I can't necessarily put my finger on one particular thing. It's just something that does not sit well with Indianapolis. I get it. They're home against Buffalo. They're probably going to score some points. I mean, the over-under there, it's right around the 48, 47 and a half area. So they're going to put up some points. I just don't like it, man. I don't know if that makes sense or not, Mike. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm actually in the same boat right there. It's something about the Colts that they just haven't been exciting. They haven't been able to get things done on offense the way. Now they're getting games won, but I think that's more their defense. But they're really low scoring games, it seems. And it's not like they're getting these high scoring opportunities, having huge big plays or anything. Now, when you are having big plays, it is usually Downs or Pierce that's getting it done. But there's a lot of ifs there, you know, and to me, it kind of scares me to have those guys. We're talking about week 10. Pittman is also like, I mean, he's just kind of in that same boat, right? Like where Michael Pittman seems like he's going to be this good player, but he just doesn't ever seem to get there.
Right. Right. There's just something that you can't put your finger on it. Trans-Siberian man, and that's the only thing I can say. I can't explain it. Why? We'll call it, why don't we call it the AJ Dillon / Tyler Boyd effect? How about that? We'll just call it that. Or Gabe Davis. We'll call it that, since that's more of a relevant analogy to Trans-Siberian.
Right, but even, it just doesn't seem like they ever have those big games like they normally, like the other guys that you're like, oh, I think he can do that. But it just doesn't seem like they ever have big games. They should be having these flash in the pan games at the very least. But Downs, I feel like he had his big games with Richardson. I don't think I've seen too much with him and Flacco yet this season. Flacco seemed to favor Pierce and Pittman, but then that even kind of evaporated and dried up. And now it's more like Mo Alley Cox has been getting the job done. And and I can't remember the other tight end that's on their team that I saw him the other day. And I'm like, that guy's still in the NFL. I couldn't believe it.
I think it's Hinkle McCringleberry. I think it's Hinkle McCringleberry. That's who it is.
Hinkle McCringleberry, yeah.
If you've seen that Key and Peele skit, but so before we can move on to any other questions, just because this game happens to be staring me in the face as far as the spread and the over-under, and the fact that Kansas City is 8-0 against your Denver Broncos, surprisingly halfway decent Broncos. I like the Broncos, man. I was eyeing this one as a potential upset. Hopkins being there definitely ups Kansas City's chances. I can't see the Chiefs going undefeated, but I thought this game was a very interesting one. I'm curious about your thoughts on this one. You're a little muted there, Chief.
Yeah, I was coughing there for a second. That is a big game. That's going to be a big one right there. I think that we're going to see Kansas City just keeps finding ways to win. But I keep thinking that this is going to be one of those ones that they're going to have a little bit of a tougher time. Denver always plays these guys like crazy tough. I feel like if they're going to get a 1 on their loss column, it's going to be Denver that does it to them. I think that this game's going to be mostly defensive. I feel like the Denver defense is going to be able to at least keep them in the game to an extent. Like Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a whole lot of turnovers. They don't make a lot of mistakes, but I don't think that they're going to have to do a whole awful lot to win, except sit back and let their defense grind down on Bo Nix and the rest of the offense, because Kansas City's got a great defense as well. I really think that this is going to be a low scoring, drag them out. I don't mind the running backs so much here, like Samaje Perine. I don't mind. I do feel like they'll get on them quick, but I don't see this game being over 20-15, 20-13, something in that window. But I very well could see Denver pulling it off. They'd have to outgrind them at the end. But I do think if Denver does put the 1 in the L column, it will probably be in Denver, not at Arrowhead, though. So.
Well, it's actually, speaking of the running backs that you just mentioned, I did have a scenario that was asked this morning, too. Somebody was trying to decide between Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Swift. I'm leaning more Kareem Hunt. He seems to be back to kind of the old Kareem Hunt that we saw in Kansas City. I don't even know when the hell that was. 6-7 years ago. I forget how long ago that was. But even though Swift is kind of coming into his own, I'm leaning slightly towards Kareem Hunt. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, I like Kareem Hunt a little bit more than I like DeAndre Swift. Volume. I feel like this is going to be a game that they're going to pound the clock down quite a bit. I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of offensive production. I think you're going to see a lot more of a time of possession game as opposed to let's get things scoring and let's get ahead type situations. Because again, I feel like Kansas City has to grind you down, man. They don't have to do a whole awful lot to beat you. If you're Denver's looked really good this year, a lot better than I was giving them credit for, but It is still Denver. You can see what happens when they get put up on a big stage. Like it reminded me of Wyoming football, Wyoming football with Josh Allen. It was always so exciting. Here we go. And then we'd actually hit a school, like an actual school that is people that go to it, and things like that. Like Texas. Texas was a good one. It's like, oh, we're going to beat the crap out of Texas this time around. And no, Texas always beat us by like 60 points. And it was funny because they'd play with their food a little bit. be like 7-0 at halftime, and you'd even be even more excited, like, yeah, buddy, here we go. And then the final score would be 85-7 somehow. And, and
What
so
do you
it
mean?
just kind of reminds me of that. Like, it just Denver, when they got faced up with a real big opponent, they did not look as good as that defense was definitely lost a lot of their teeth, a lot of that edge. So,
yeah. And then, if you're looking at a game like that, and then probably on the flip side to the least appealing game, in my opinion, this week, you get Tennessee at the Chargers. Could you not want to watch reruns of Saved by the Bell more than this game? I mean, I don't even know how else to put it, bro.
I would watch the election all over again, as opposed to watching like election highlights. How about that? I'll watch election highlights over anything on that game right there. As crazy as it is. Hold on. He says, this is his team right here. It's Trans-Siberian. He says, good insights, YouTube. His team is Jackson. Nice. Hunt, Etienne, AJ, Shakir, Collins, Williams, Hawkinson, Aubrey. Wish me luck. Enjoy the games. Yeah, buddy. I actually like that lineup quite a bit.
Right. Absolutely. Especially, well, obviously, Lamar Jackson put up some pretty big numbers on Thursday, so that's a good start. We expect big things from Kareem Hunt this week. AJ Brown, I'm liking Philly more on the ground because Dallas can seemingly give up 150 yards rushing to me if I were out there. So I like maybe a Saquon Barkley more than I do like an AJ Brown or a Devontae Smith. But certainly he'll get his yards, and he'll probably get in the end zone too against Dallas because they have completely changed from last year where their defense was hot and you had a tough time scoring on them to now everybody can score on them all of a sudden. So very, very decent lineup. I love the Hawkinson one too. So that's definitely a good play, and I expect him to get hot against Jacksonville.
Yeah, he didn't look that good last week. I mean, he didn't look that bad last week either, but he didn't look that bad last week, so on the second half of that, I do think Hawkinson does see a little bit more volume. And it was funny because remember I was saying it doesn't seem like Darnold's spreading it out. Addison had a touchdown last week. He actually did kind of start throwing it around right there. But I think that does it for our questions and everything there, my man. Do you have anything else to add before we go ahead and wish these guys luck and go ahead and get back to this exciting football game between Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants?
Yeah, phenomenal game, which I'm not even paying attention to, nor do I know the score of. Well, we wish Joseph, him and his family, a speedy recovery for the sickness that has plagued that household this week. So hopefully he's back on his feet, or everybody's back on their feet pretty soon, and we can get back to business next Sunday. But, yeah, a lot of distractions, man, this week that kind of took the focus a little bit off of football and fantasy specifically. So we'll get it right. Hopefully everybody's kind of put that aside, and let's get back to football and just having some fun this week, man.
Absolutely. Yep. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Once again, man, if you're over there overseas, like a lot of our favorite people are talking to you, Trans-Siberian, just be safe, man. And hopefully everything starts kind of working out for the better. Hopefully humanity starts taking care of each other. Cause man, I feel like we're at this boiling point. But you know what happens when you actually boil over is you get to a place where we actually start to rebuild and we can actually start going and doing things that, like I said, benefit each other, start loving each other, taking care of each other. Let's do this thing. Let's go. Let's win week 10. Let's get all them championship trophies all lined up and let's have some fun. And you guys take care. And Joe also, man, I hope the family is feeling better. Can't wait till you're back on next week. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jeff, as always, for joining me. And thank you.